You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Challenge us at Wexford Insurances 0818 31 30 30.
I'm now joined in studio by Stephen Duggan, the Commercial Director with Mythen Construction. Stephen, you might start by telling me a bit about your own background, please.
Well, my background is I qualified from Waterford in the early 90s with a degree in construction management, and found myself in Germany for a couple of years managing a subcontract business, and gradually worked my way back towards Ireland and drifted into commercial management and joined Mythens in 2002. And I've been with them since then, and primarily my role is to look after two main functions in the company. One is the marketing and sales side, which is very, very important to us, ever more so now, and the other is the commercial function in the company, so procurement, contract administration, dealing with clients, client relationship management, that kind of thing.
Very good. You might tell me a little bit about the history to Mythen Construction for those that wouldn't be that familiar with the company. Yeah,
Mythens is what I would describe as the ultimate family company. It's owned by Billy and Maurice Mythen and Billy's wife Marie, and I don't think I've ever seen another organisation that's got a greater amount of family members, whether they're sons, brothers-in-laws, sisters or brothers, and I think that's one of the key strengths of the family, or the company, is that it is such a strong family company and it carries very, very strong core values forward,
How many staff has Mythen Construction currently?
Currently it's running at around 50. That's direct employees, and when you take into consideration then indirect employment, it's probably totaling about 150.
Give me a description of the type of projects that you've worked on over the years.
Over the years, we've worked in all sectors, from healthcare to education, to industrial projects, pharmaceutical projects. We've done a number of fit-outs, the fit-out sector, and then hotel and leisure. I mean, we've done some of the most prestigious hotel projects in the country, like Monarch, for example, in Enniscorthy, or the Stillorgan Park Hotel. And at the moment, we're focusing very much on new sectors like pharmaceutical and fit-out. So we work in all sectors, really.
The construction sector has been hit very, very hardly with the current economic climate ever since the recession kicked in 2008. How has Mythens weathered the storm in that regard?
Well, like any company, we've suffered a lot. The turnover has dropped massively from a point where we were between 60 and 70 million a year to this year we're forecasting to do about 15 million. So it's been a very, very tough process. It's involved a lot of pain along the way, a lot of restructuring, a lot of consolidation. But what we're finding now, particularly over the last 12 months, is I think we're through the hardest part of it, and we're starting a phase of growth. We're looking at increasing turnover this year by about 35%, and we're forecasting next year to increase that again by 30 to 40%. So I think we've turned a corner. I wouldn't be too quick in saying the worst is over us, but the challenges of the last couple of years, I think we're starting to move forward from them.
What are your thoughts on how the government have made decisions in relation to the effects on the construction sector itself?
Well, it's gone from one extreme to the other, and the government, to be fair, is almost in an impossible situation. I mean, you could argue that at a time when they should have dampened the construction industry, they didn't do enough to do that. They maintained tax breaks and allowed development maybe to go ahead without enough regulation. And I think we're suffering from, the fellow once said to me, the bigger the party, the bigger the hangover, and I think there's a bit of that to it. But certainly there is opportunity there for the government if they released fundings, and I know that's easy for me to say, but there are opportunities. I mean, there's never been better value for money than now in construction. In terms of internationally, our competitiveness is unquestionable. There's capacity in the industry, there's value for money, and there's a need to increase our competitiveness. I mean, look at the areas like broadband, look at our healthcare, look at our education. If we want to maintain a position as a first world economy, we have to invest in infrastructure. So I think the government perhaps could be doing a little bit more to generate more private sector investment, particularly in the likes of PPPs and in the areas like healthcare, like primary care centres. That's been a real disappointment. I mean, the strategy for primary care centres has been around for nearly 6-7 years now, and I think to date we've delivered 5. So you could argue that more could be done,
Just to focus on, let's say, over the years, the public sector invested an awful lot of money in construction projects. It was well said and well documented out there that extras and alterations, taking place on projects were a source of a cash cow for construction companies. Is that still the case on some of the public projects that are available out there?
See, part of the problem is the way the projects are procured. On the public sector, what you're really dealing with is generally always lowest tender wins, So it's a difficult situation for contractors and also for government to get around, and that the lowest price always wins. Someone always said to me, or someone once said to me about a story about the space shuttle, do you want to be the one sitting on a rocket that's been built by the lowest price tender, And the fact is that the construction is a very competitive process, But I think on the public sector side, the government have introduced new contracts about 4 or 5 years ago that are very, very onerous in terms of all risk, whether in terms of project delivery, time, in terms of, for example, the quantities on the contract is now the risk of the contractor. And that was a big area of dispute, particularly on roads contracts years ago. They would tender a project and let's say they would encounter unforeseen ground conditions, so there'd be more rock than was envisaged. Now that's completely the risk of the contractor. So in a sense, you could argue that the government have bought the risk out, but in reality, it's not being priced into contracts. But on the private sector, what we look to do is the days of going in and looking for extra after extra after extra, they're not there because clients don't have the money, they don't have the funding. And, to grow a business in this market, you need to be delivering a service that will replicate itself. You need repeat business. So what we look to do is bring value to the table through initiatives like value engineering or looking at alternatives or different ways of delivering a project. For example, we're just doing a school in Kildare at the moment, and we tendered it on the basis of 2 phases. And we've now managed to amalgamate both phases, so they fell over a school term cycle into one school term. So we're essentially saving 6 months on the project, which saves the client time and saves us money. So that's where we look to bring value to the process,
Education is certainly one area that's going to experience growth in building over the coming years. What other sectors do you think have green shoots?
I think there are opportunities in sectors like food. I mean, what if you stand back from it and you ask yourself, well, what sectors of the economy are going well? What sectors of the economy are still vibrant? And really, it's manufacturing, it's food production, it's the fit out sector in Dublin is I wouldn't say buoyant, but it's sustained. Education, healthcare. The government have to deliver on the primary care strategy, for example. It's integral to how they will deliver healthcare services moving forward. So there's opportunities there, So I think, on the main contracting side, which is our business, they're the core opportunities that I see,
How closely is Mythen Construction aligning its strategy with that of the government strategy?
Very closely. It's integral. Over 60% of our work is government work. It's publicly funded work. So what we are doing is working hard to develop our reputation and position ourselves certainly within the sectors that we've identified as core opportunities for Mythen,
Okay, Stephen, well, that's the public sector dealt with. If we were to focus on the private sector, how are you identifying new opportunities in that area?
Well, it's funny. Years ago, a builder, and I think this has been part of the problem why a lot of companies have suffered so terribly, we were very opportunistic in nature. Work fell into our lap in a lot of circumstances, certainly in terms of opportunities to tender. There was so much private sector work around that you didn't really have to do any research. It just, you found out about projects or you were approached by clients. Now what we're finding is we've got to be a lot more structured in our approach. So we do a lot of market research. We study planning permissions. We study online procurement portals. We gather market intelligence through a number of different sources and feed all of that into a CRM system. And we use that to identify what opportunities are suitable for us in our business.
So once you identify those opportunities, what's the next step?
Well, the next step is to qualify them, not all opportunities are equal, So what we try and do is we try and qualify them. We look at the client, we look at the profile, we look at the point in the purchasing cycle that project is at, and we try and focus our efforts on what is a reasonably convertible opportunity for us. One of the great quotes I heard one time was from Robert De Niro. A guy asked him why he was so successful in his career, and he said the challenge is in the choices. He picked the right roles. And I think that's the same for any business. It doesn't matter whether you're in construction, you have to go after the opportunities that you have a good chance of converting.
Other large construction companies in line with your own size have made headlines across the media over the last number of years, I suppose for all the wrong reasons. What has been the secret to the success for Mythens in terms of remaining so fit in this market?
Look, I think there's a mixture number of things in that. One is, in making some of the right choices that I spoke about before. Another is a little bit of luck. I think one of the first things, Mythens, I suppose, one of the things that was born out of the unfortunate demise of Wallace's, Wallace's were at the time one of the biggest construction companies in Ireland, and Billy and Morris both worked there. And I remember Billy saying to me, one of the things that had been very sort of apparent to him was that a lot of companies at the end of a good year, they just take all the money out of the company. Every year they take all the money out of the company, and Mythens never did that. They reinvested in the company. They reinvested in the people, in plant, in equipment, in having the right premises and backup, and kept the company well capitalized. And I think that strength, that capital base, carried the company through the recession, but also it's given us the ability to convince clients and to reassure clients that we're not going to go the way that all the other companies, like unfortunately Pearson, McNamara's, and all of these other companies like Bowen have gone. So we're now in a position where we can almost use that as a support to our sales process. So I think that's probably been the major factor. And a little bit of luck. A little bit of luck along the way.
There's been hundreds of thousands of people made redundant throughout the construction sector over the last number of years. Has that affected you in any way?
It has. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to do predominantly with this interview was thank our staff. I mean, as I mentioned before, I mean, we've been in business since 1996, and a lot of the staff members, be they family or outside, have been with the company ever since they joined, some since 1996. And, construction is a service industry, and we don't have a unique product, any patents. The quality of service that we deliver is entirely dependent on the people that we have to deliver that service, if that makes sense, And it's through the strength of our people and our staff that we've been able to deliver the type of service that we have, And, it is a challenge in the construction industry at the moment. There is a brain drain happening, whether it's at managerial level, our top engineers, our top project managers, they're leaving the country in droves. They're going to Australia and Canada and the Middle East. And, whether it's at the site level, I mean, there's a complete drain of skills, So it's a big challenge for the industry. We're losing people, and also we're not producing people. 5 people applied for the degree in quantity surveying in Waterford this year. 5 people. I mean, that's a course that would have been oversubscribed 5 years ago. And likewise, there's no new fresh individuals entering into the trades. So it's going to be a big problem in a couple of years, and it's already a challenge.
What impact does that have on your subcontractors?
Well, it impacts the delivery of their service. It impacts the delivery of the service, and in not all cases, but in some circumstances, we're almost managing our subcontracts and managing their business. Right down to instructing their operatives on site of what to do, because they simply don't have the resources.
Are you finding that the subcontractors haven't got the money to purchase materials?
That's a big problem. Yeah, it's a big problem. I mean, there's some well-known national manufacturers. I don't really want to mention names, but I mean, they won't issue credit to cladding contractors, for example, So we have to either pay for their materials or pay up front for them. And it's the same with carpet contractors, vinyl contractors. So it is a big challenge, yeah. It's a big challenge. And what we find is, years ago you could place an order, let's say it was for joinery, to a contractor, and really you might stay in contact with them, but the stuff arrived the day that you were told it was going to arrive. Whereas now you have to get much deeper. You might even have to involve yourself in a couple of visits to their factory. You might look to see evidence that they've placed the purchase order for the integral materials that they need to manufacture it. So the actual process of managing a construction contract has got a lot more involved.
And is that making you reconsider going down the road of subcontractors and keeping it all direct?
No, because I think one of the things is core strengths. You have to know what you're good at, and it's impossible to be an expert in everything, and I think that relates also to subcontracting work. At the end of the day, what we're looking to do is develop long-term partnerships with good contractors and subcontractors, and they give us a level of support, and we support them with bringing opportunities for work to them, So we find ourselves working more and more with the same contractors, and a lot of them are, contractors from the southeast,
So tell me about what you've done over the last number of years to adapt the business to the current climate.
Well, obviously, as your turnover drops, you have to adapt accordingly, So unfortunately, we've had to downsize the business. We've had to become much more lean in how we deliver. I think people have taken on, and again, I come back to, thanking the staff for the additional burden that they've taken on. I mean, people have taken on additional responsibilities. They are much more flexible in how they deliver work. You know, we have to be a lot more creative in how we deliver our services. So, I mean, the organisation in terms of overheads on site is incredibly lean now. I mean, when we price a project now, preliminaries would be less than 3% of an overhead, where during the boom it was 7 to 8%. So, I mean, that's a massive, massive reduction, and that's solely down to the flexibility of the staff and how they now operate and work, you know. So, you know, great, respect has to be given to them for taking that on board, you know. That's the primary thing that we've had to do. And then obviously we've had to go out, like I was saying before, and look for new work. And that's what we're doing now. We're out looking for new work. We're much more active in how we market and sell the company, you know. And
what's your strategy in relation to that?
Well, what we did is we carried out an overview of the construction market as a whole, and we identified all sectors that were relevant to us and that would present us an opportunity to increase our turnover and do so profitably. And then what we did is, instead of looking at everything, we actually boiled it down to 5 sectors. We really said we were going to focus more of our opportunity, and that's not to say if something outside of those sectors, if it came along, that we wouldn't consider it, but all of our effort in terms of winning new work, in terms of researching, and in terms of how we position ourselves from a marketing perspective, relate to those sectors. And I'm a great believer in momentum. You know, if you are more focused, the more focused you are, the more momentum you build in that sector. So you gain a reputation, you gain credibility, you gain track record, you know. So I think that's what we're doing now. We're focusing a lot more on certain sectors, and that's actually delivering results. I mean, the construction industry, even though it's been decimated, it's still a large industry. It's 8 billion a year, you know, and within that, certain sectors are still very, very substantial, you know. So what we're doing is we're being a lot more careful about the opportunities that we pursue.
And in that regard, look, lots of people will say there's nothing happening in the construction sector out there today. Would you disagree with that?
I do. I think it's completely untrue to say that there's no opportunity for construction companies. I think it's a lot more challenging, you know. And I think that one of the things that construction companies maybe traditionally haven't been great on is the whole area of planning and strategic planning, and particularly in terms of sales and marketing. I think, you know, the business coach Bradley Sugars has a great quote: if you're not spending 50% of the company's efforts marketing and selling the company, and 50% running and operating the company, then there's something out of kilter. And I think if you looked at a lot of construction companies, there'd be 99% operations and maybe 1% sales and marketing, you know. And I think that's the biggest wake-up call for the industry, you know, how we sell ourselves, the service, how we deliver our service. It has to change. It has to move into the 21st century, you know. There's still a market there for construction services. There are still clients who want construction services. So I don't think that the industry is dead. I think it's challenged. I mean, you know, relative to our GDP, and in terms of comparing us to our European counterparts, the industry should be valued at between 12 and 13 billion. So it's overcorrected itself massively, but there's still an industry there, you know. Tell
me about a typical day for you.
Oh, it varies. It's never the same. That's the thing about the construction industry. But I'm generally up around 7 in the morning and get into the office for about 8:30, you know. And I try always to spend a couple of hours every day looking for opportunities for work, whether that's looking at market intelligence. A lot of what I do relates to pre-qualifying for government work. So we would look at the e-tenders portal and try and identify which opportunities are right for us. And then when we have done, I sit down with the team and we draw up a strategy for how we're going to convert that into a tender opportunity. And then I might spend some time looking at tenders with our estimating manager. And then generally it's just the daily challenges that come up in construction contracts. Things rarely go to plan, you know. And I've learned, Karl, over the years, just, you know, you can work too much, you know. And I try and be out of the office for about 6 or 6:30. And I'm a cycling nut. Sometimes I joke it's like my second job. Certainly my wife thinks it is. So I spend a lot of time cycling, yeah. So that's what I like to do, you know, and then spending time with my family, you know.
Well, Stephen, what's your outlook for the construction sector for the coming years?
I think, you know, my outlook is overall, it's cautiously optimistic, you know. I think that there are going to be opportunities for companies to grow and space for new entrants, no doubt. You know, there's going to be almost like a revision of the old guard, you know. And I think for us, I see an opportunity. I mean, look, you know, there's been a massive reconsolidation in our industry. The likes of Pierce and McNamara's and these large companies have gone and they've created a vacuum to a certain degree. And they're also going to create an opportunity for new companies to move into their space.
Well, Stephen, it's great to hear that Mythen Construction is going from strength to strength, and I wish you continued success in your role at the company.
You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Think Wexford Insurances for your business insurance.